Coming up, Prince Andrew settles the lawsuit with the woman who accused him of sexually assaulting her as a minor. Then, the days of families picking up and moving for the husband's job may be behind us. Hello, I'm Bonnie Urbay. Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, Prince Andrew's sexual assault settlement. Embattled Prince Andrew, Queen Elizabeth II's disgraced second son, has settled a lawsuit filed by a woman who says he raped her when she was 17. Virginia Giuffre claimed Andrew sexually abused her at notorious sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein's mansion in Manhattan and Private Island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Prince Andrew did not admit guilt in the surprise out-of-court settlement, but he will pay Giuffre an undisclosed amount of money and make a substantial donation to a charity that supports victims' rights. But this doesn't appear to end the controversy across the pond, where there's still a call for him to give up his last honorary position, Duke of York. Joining me today are Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeever, Independent Women's Forum President Carrie Lukas, the Amsterdam News' Sam Bennett, and the Washington Examiner's columnist, Tiana Lowe. So, Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeever, welcome back. We haven't seen you in a while, but it's always great to see you. Who pays for this settlement?
Well, I suppose this settlement will be paid by the people of England if it's coming from the prince, because they are very much subsidized from that public. It's a shame that the citizens of that nation is going to have to pay for his bad behavior at minimum and actually criminal behavior at worst.
And what do you think what impact, if any, will this have on child trafficking, which is by most accounts going up all the time, no matter how much we try to fight it? The fact that, and there are so many nonprofits working to liberate people who are trafficked and also to prosecute perpetrators, but increased international air traffic and many more porous borders are making it much easier for traffickers than ever before. So, Carrie Lukas, what do you think is the answer?
Yeah, obviously there's no easy answer on such a tough and intractable issue. On the one hand, it's a positive thing that there is a growing public awareness about the extent of this problem. But then it is, I always am frustrated on things like this, when you see that there seems to be one set of rules for the elite and one set of rules for the other. And certainly that's this case. I don't think that many other people would get this kind of a sweetheart deal if there is indeed as much evidence as I think we all here suspect there is. So, awareness of at least the problem, although I'm sure a lot of people will be shaking their head at the outcome.
Do you agree, Avis, that this might help raise awareness of the problem and therefore push down the numbers of those being trafficked?
It may raise awareness, but I kind of agree that this is a really hard issue to get your arms around. I do not believe that we focus enough on this. I do not believe that there is enough attention and investment into really investigating this. And I think a lot of it is because there are a lot of high-powered, very wealthy individuals that are involved with this, that have the power to suppress activity, quite frankly. Look how long it took for this to come to light, right? And so though I would like to say that this is going to make a dent in the sex trafficking field, the realist in me says it really isn't.
Yeah. All right, Sam Bennett, you were married to a British citizen, correct?
That is correct.
So what do you think? What sticks out to you in this whole situation of future developments? I mean, I remember going, quite frankly, to Britain as a teenager and thinking, Why do they still have this monarchy? And why are Britons willing to kick in this money when even if they didn't have a monarchy, they'd have tons of castles and all of the rest of it to draw tourists?
Right. Well, you hit the nail on the head. Actually, it's a big contributor, right, to the economy of Britain, the tourist industry. But I think what's telling about this, and yes, I was married for 8 years to a professional soccer player. They call it football there. Is that the monarchy not only plays a disproportionate role in England, it plays a disproportionate role internationally, right? This is the royal family of the world. Let's put this in perspective, right? They're the ones that are watched more than any other royal family. And in addition to that, I thought it was very important timing that the Queen announced the acceptance, the formal acceptance of Camilla around the same time. It was almost as if they were doing a very careful PR campaign. Let's release this about Camilla first, and then we'll deal with the situation with Prince, Andrew. So I think the royal family, what I'm gathering and listening to the English side of the family, right, is that they're working very, very hard to own up and not sweep anything under the rug. My sense is that a lot of hard lessons were learned about their poor handling of Lady Diana, right? And so I feel like the royal family is at least making an effort, right, to be public about this situation as safely as they can.
Well, then why conflate that or put together the timing of naming Camilla as she can be queen when Prince Charles becomes king? What does that have to do with them being more outspoken?
They were plowing the ground, right? Honestly, if you think about it, there was a previous monarchy, right? Indeed, the father of the current queen, who took the throne unexpectedly when his brother attempted to marry a divorcee and was not allowed to. So the public acceptance of Camilla is a very big, important historic footnote in royal history. So my sense is they were plowing the ground, right, to make it, yes, we have this bad actor, Prince Andrew has behaved poorly, but look at us, we're accepting Camilla. And becoming more a modern royal family.
But does anybody think after Elizabeth retires, does anybody think the monarchy will be as popular as it has been in the past? I mean, Prince Charles, well, I think a lot of him for all his work on environmentalism, right, and against climate change. He's not the most lovable character. Camilla is hated because of what she did to Diana, and there's nothing the crown can do to ever change Brits' opinions of her, because Diana was a star. She was the biggest star that the monarchy had in a long time since Elizabeth. And Elizabeth only became a star because of going out there with the people during the bombings in World War II. Right. It was not because she has this great personality. It was because she is beloved by her country. So I mean, it seems to me after Elizabeth retires, the movement for getting rid of the monarchy, or at least paying for it, if the people want to pay for it themselves, I mean, the people in the monarchy want to find a way to make enough money to support their existence, which is doubtful, then don't you think that a lot of Brits are going to say, come on, this isn't an expense we don't need to be carrying? No?
I don't think so. If you look at who's coming up the pike, Diana's oldest son and his wife, who are enormously popular. I think you have the next generation coming up that are enormously popular, doing the job right. I don't see it going away. And if I could do a short pivot to Dr. Joan, my good friend, Dr. Jones-DeWeever, I don't think this makes a dent in sexual trafficking. I myself, having been sexually trafficked, there's all these societal problems that are underneath that create the fodder, the girls in particular, but the boys too, who are vulnerable to this trafficking. So I don't think it makes a dent. It does send the right message, but we have deep societal problems that we do have to deal with that feeds this phenomenon in terms of the girls and boys.
Carrie Lukas, your thoughts on what's going to put a dent in social trafficking?
You know, if it was only so easy, I mean, we do have to have, I mean, I think that's one of the great conundrums. And I think there is, if there was an easy solution, if there was a policy, that there would be tremendous bipartisan support around the world to do something about this. But there's not, and there's too much money in it. I do think that having better policing, border control, education about the existence and recognition of the potential victims, you know, we can help around the edges, but it's a really intractable problem. So yeah, this is clearly, this one little news story is not going to solve what is such a horrific problem we face as a really a global community.
And we tend to think of trafficking as a problem for poor countries in Asia or Africa, but we've got it going on here too.
That's right. Oh, yeah, it's worldwide. I mean, there really is no income limitation with this. But for me, the answer is about consequences. As long as people don't go to jail, as long as people don't have to pay, and it doesn't hurt Prince Andrew's family to pay millions of dollars to anybody. It doesn't hurt them. They have an endless flow of money from the British people. Thank you very much, British people. Okay, so that doesn't hurt anyone, you know. And I find it, quite frankly, very hypocritical that they are, in essence, protecting a potential sexual abuser. It seems like, while they excommunicate Prince Harry and what should have been Princess Meghan Markle. And so, you know, it's very interesting to me how the royal family creates these media sort of pivots that protects one of their own. But even when they commit, it looks like, if you're paying, it seems like you're probably committed these horrible crimes. But at the same time, you are clutching your pearls when what would have honestly been the heir apparent to Princess Diana's type of charisma, when she comes into the family, but of a different hue, they can't handle it and they get rid of it.
Well, when you say that, when you say they're paying for it, are they not going to? I thought there was some attempt to make it come out of some private fund that belonged to the family, as opposed to public money that British taxpayers.
Well, let's just be clear. If we look at the history of Britain, a lot of the money that they have is not just from the British taxpayer, it's from pilfering other countries, taking their wealth and then claiming it as theirs. My point is, it doesn't hurt them any to be able to pay, no matter where they got this money from, to pay off this woman. It doesn't hurt them at all. And as long as there are no consequences to the people who are the demand in terms of sex trafficking, there will never be an end to this problem.
Tiana, your thoughts on the future of the British monarchy and sex trafficking and how those two interrelate?
So obviously, you know, there's been a lot of stir in American tabloid media about Prince Harry's memoir. That's not the one that matters. The one that matters is Virginia Roberts, because her settlement did not include an NDA. The real question that the British citizens are obviously going to have is that question of, was this settlement taxpayer funded? Were their tax dollars going to the Queen, and then did the Queen fund, you know, the attempt to silence and smear a very legitimate rape accuser? I mean, Prince Charles has long said that he wants to downsize the monarchy. You know, he wants to turn Buckingham Palace in part to, you know, more of a museum, more public. He wants it to be him, Camilla, William, and his family. So quite frankly, Megxit couldn't have come at a better time, because he doesn't want to have everyone else around. The future will just be basically, will they try and normalize Prince Andrew? Will it be clear you're done? Not only are you no longer going to be on the balcony, not only are you going to no longer be in public events, but you don't speak for us. Prince Charles is someone who's very well connected in this work. You know, he was a huge environmentalist and cared about climate change long before it was en vogue to do so. So can he be forward thinking? And really the future rests with William and Kate, and can they keep their connection to York over?
Yeah.
Sam, go ahead.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's the next generation that's going to be shaping the future of the monarchy, not Charles, not Camilla.
And why should Americans care about whether there is a monarchy or not?
Hey, it's great magazine fodder.
We shouldn't. I couldn't.
So
Not
as a
mine.
Best
source
thing we can
of
do is
gossip,
stop talking about these folks. Who cares? You know, I think they're all sort of don't seem like the best people. So
agreed, but I mean, the tabloids, the New York Post, where would they be without, or the
That's
Daily
right.
Mail in the United States, where would they be without the royal family? All right.
Absolutely.
From the British scandal to married and moving. Married couples are less likely than ever to prioritize the husband's career over the wife's when moving for new job opportunities. That, according to a new study from the University of Kansas, which looked at people moving for the sake of their careers. Researchers found when the wife and husband had similar income levels, they were less likely to move to another state for a job. But families in households where the man was the primary breadwinner were more likely to move. Changing societal attitudes explain the shift. In the past, the man was expected to be the sole earner, but today, two-income households are much more common. Families now are reluctant to move and uproot the career of either breadwinner. So Carrie Lukas, in the age of working from home and the pandemic, how relevant is moving for one person's job or the other? Or has it become?
Yeah, I think it's still very relevant. Obviously, there's a lot of families. It's still a minority of jobs that are work from home flexible. And that's kind of an elite problem where there's a lot of people out there who still have have to be in an office and making these decisions. Obviously we are moving beyond that. The women are increasingly a powerful part of the workforce. There's a growing number of women who are take home bigger salaries, are the primary earners for their families. So it makes sense that those gender roles are changing. And I do think that you're right though, Bonnie, that one of the things that is interesting is that oftentimes I think when somebody's job is more transferable, that's something that it wasn't really discussed in this study. Some people have their jobs are stickier, where they can move more easily than others, especially when there's occupational licensing regimes that make it so somebody has to stay in a state or has to go to another state for better opportunities. Some of those make it kind of artificial, and women's jobs are more likely to require licenses. So that can make it a lot harder for women. That's a barrier I think everybody should be looking at, is trying to make it easier to carry licenses across state lines.
And it is pretty amazing, isn't it, that in this time of COVID and a whole lot more telecommuting, at least in jobs, in industries where it's possible, not in the lower paying industries, which are overpopulated with women compared to their percentage in the workforce, but that women still tend to, especially at the lower rungs of the economy, they still tend to out earn their husbands. How often is that happening, Avis? How often is it that women are out earning their husbands? And therefore, I mean, any family's gonna have to base moving on, take that into consideration.
It's happening increasingly. I would say that it is an increasing trend, but not necessarily the norm yet, but an increasing trend. And I would say that, we do work differently when we can. As you mentioned, those jobs that tend to have more higher educated people within them tend to have more workplace flexibility. Those were the jobs that were most easily transferable to the online space once we experienced this pandemic. And a lot of companies have come to figure out, hey, it's a lot cheaper for my workforce to be online rather than for me to continue to pay all of this commercial rent, for example. And so some of those companies will never go back to 100% virtual in person. I'm also thinking about my son's experience. He's finishing his MBA this year. He's starting with a tech company that's technically based in the West Coast, but his job is location independent. They have told him that he can live anywhere he wants to as long as he's within a reasonable distance of an airport. That's the only restriction that he has. And I really think that this is the direction of the future of the workforce. But as you mentioned, unfortunately, people who work low wage, oftentimes service level jobs do not have that freedom. And so they are very much specifically stuck to a specific geographic area. And that's something that the virtual world is not going to get them out of.
Yeah.
What does it say about our society that within pretty much a generation or two, women have gone from being secondary breadwinners to primary breadwinners in much greater numbers?
I think it's thrilling. What it says to me is that just like what it is for running for women for office, right? The more women we have in the pipeline, the more women we're going to win, right? So if we have more women in the workforce, that is going to change the dynamic. It means more women are going to ascend and move to those higher paying jobs. I remember when I was a general sales manager for Bell Atlantic in a previous incarnation, and I had a young woman, terrific saleswoman, who wanted to work from home 2 days a week. So she had 2 little ones. She was our top performing rep, Bonnie. And the higher ups, all white men, right? Older white men. So, oh, we can't do that because if we do that, everyone's going to want to do it. That was 25 years ago. Look at how things have changed since then. So I think that because we have more women in the workforce, tell me if I'm wrong, any of the other panelists, aren't we 55% of the workforce or more in aggregate now? I think we're more women. I could be wrong, but with so many women, the chances that they will ascend, Bonnie, to higher levels of achievement and earning power is almost mathematically guaranteed. So it's great.
But the right, Carrie, if I may, or Tiana, jump in, the right doesn't see this as a good thing. It sees women demasculinizing, if you will, men.
Bonnie, that's such
Bonnie, that's a straw
Yeah,
man. That's
you're
such
so
a straw
excited.
man. Yeah, you have 2 conservative women on this panel who are clearly working and clearly have no problem with that. No, the issue
You do differ in that way from a lot of conservatives who feel
no, you don't. Find somebody, Bonnie. Find a panelist that is willing to say that. Find a conservative man who's going to say, "I don't want women to work." That's a very 50 years ago attitude.
Not working, out earning.
Bonnie, I don't even think that the out earning thing, the concern is not that women are earning too much money. The concern is that when women are wildly overrepresented in higher education, we get 60% of all bachelor degrees and even more of higher education degrees. It creates a mismatch in the marriage market that reduces our fertility rate. Because unfortunately, and this is a societal problem I wish didn't exist, I wish people married more outside of their educational strata, outside of their income strata. We do have a weird elitism and a weird societal disdain for a lot of crucial blue collar jobs that I think we've all come to appreciate a lot more during the pandemic. The conservative concern is that we don't have enough marriage because we have these gender disparities within social stratas. That is the concern. The concern is not that women are doing too well. It's how do we bring men up with us?
I'm going to pick up on Tiana's point, because I think that that one of the frustrations for a lot of, this isn't just conservatives, but this is a lot of people, especially when you look at in African-American communities, in other minority communities where we have a male crisis. You know, I'm all for women doing fabulously, and let's make women earn as much as possible. But we also want our sons to do well. We want our husbands to do well. We want our brothers. So I feel like sometimes this becomes like, oh, we all want women to win. But we shouldn't, which is great. Hooray, we want women to win, but we want men to win too. We don't want our boys left behind. And if girls or women are out earning men because men are falling out of the workforce and becoming drug addicts or addicted to video games, that's a problem for all of us. That's a human tragedy. And so I don't want to be so binary in thinking that I'm only rooting for, XX chromosome members of society.
Well, that's what I was alluding to earlier when you said it didn't exist, is that there's more of a concern from conservative circles that men are being denuded by women's progress. And yet,
I think it's important. It's not concern about women doing well. It's about men doing badly.
Okay.
Yes.
But also the majority of people who dropped out of the workforce, and we had a huge dropout during the pandemic, were women.
Right.
Why?
But Bonnie, you cannot divorce that fact that women dropped out of the pandemic from the fact that the schools were closed, and they were closed in effect for upwards of a year in most blue cities and urban areas. The fact is that those home child caring duties did fall on women. And still, when you have areas like Flint, Michigan that are still 100% remote, and when you have places like DC that can trigger, a week-long quarantine because one kid tests positive for COVID, the burden falls on the mom because she could not keep a job if it is a shift job.
Okay, all right. Well, and that gets us to the end of this segment. So thank you for watching this most recent edition of To the Contrary. Let's keep the conversation going on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. And please visit our website, pbs.org/to the contrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next time.
Funding for To the Contrary provided by the E. Rhodes and Leona B. Carpenter Foundation, the Colcom Foundation, and the Charles A. Freoff Foundation. For a transcript or to see an online version of this episode of To the Contrary, please visit our PBS website at pbs.org/To the Contrary.
Be more. PBS.